welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ here again, and yet another episode or subject is counter manipulation. Plus, I'm adding in a few tactics that the cluster bees love to use. But I was thinking about this for one particular clown, and also realized about the counter manipulation that evidently I was doing this without knowing I was doing it. I mean, I knew that I was using a battle of self-respect to challenge, but I didn't really have a word for it. But thanks to Sasha Sloan, she brought up her videos about the counter manipulation, and I thought, I've done that on many occasions. And again, it's not advisable if it's someone you plan on sticking with, because the consequences of counter manipulation will be punishment. But usually if you do the counter manipulation and it's somebody you're still with, once you prove your point, one of their talents is thespianism. So you may get them, but they will not show any kind of fear, embarrassment, or shame because they don't have those emotions. They'll just look at you normally like, well, that's great, and they won't really show any kind of reaction, especially like when you catch them red-handed or you are successful with your counter manipulation. So you'll think, oh, well, this is over. Well, believe me, it's not over. They're going to be plotting the next punishment for you, and that's just the way it works. They're irrationally vindictive because if you look at it from a broader perspective, they've come to you. They have scammed you from the start. They have given you misinformation repeatedly, and then once you get to a point where you uncover this and then you fight back, oh, you're going to be punished more. And I just think that's so irrational, because there's nothing in their mind to tell them something like, well, I did scam this person for the last year. Well, maybe I deserve to be punished. No, they don't think that way. It's, how dare he catch me and do that to me, and then you'll be punished again. It's just like a never-ending cycle. So we'll move to my example of the counter manipulation. And this one had to do with a particular individual I had met that I worked in the same place with, who did the love bombing thing, and like right off the bat, like after just a few weeks, was pretty much asking for marriage, which I had thought, did you not hear that I just got out of 11 years of evil, and that's the last thing I want to do. But if they've got an agenda, that doesn't matter. They'll be pushing to get you into their cage, even if you tell them the truth. So anyway, this particular person had gone through the phases, and I had already done a little research prior to even meeting this person, so I had like a basic understanding of the cluster B and the stages, and how when I'd read about the stages and think back to numerous encounters throughout my own history, I would see like the common pattern, like, wow, this is exactly what they all did in the same order. And well, with this particular person, I've called it a case study before, because we went through the various stages and I could like see them for what they are. Now, of course, the part of the deal here is, though, the cluster B is a gaslighter. So I could like pull out literature that would pretty much tell the entire story of what we had gone through, and I even showed that to him once, and he even laughed at it, which indicates he knows there's something to it. But nothing really was said. And that's one of the gaslighting techniques they use. Like when you catch them or when you point out something obvious, you would expect them to be like, oh my goodness, that's interesting, oh, that's neat. No, you don't get that at all. You get no response, you get a laugh, or you get nothing. So at this point, I had gone through all the different stages, was at the, well, not to the discard yet, but right before it, and I could feel it coming. And I've learned when you're dealing with such a person, it doesn't do any good to try to narrate what you think things are to them, because you know what they're going to say, that you're wrong. Well, in this case, I didn't know that, so basically the way it was he arranged his schedule to be just like mine, So that meant that we were free most of the same times. But after lie after lie after lie surfaced, which pretty much undid the fictitious mask that was displayed from the start, well, it's kind of like the cat's out of the bag. And from my experience and studies, if you are a cluster B scam artist and your target figures out your motives and what you've done, and they uncover the evidence, well, your time's limited. The jig is up. But yet this person kept hanging around as much as possible, so it made me think, well, clearly the cat's out of the bag. And one of the things I thought in my mind was, well, he's been caught on many occasions. The things he's been caught with completely contradict the way he claims he is. So I was expecting one of two things. I was expecting for the person to say, oh my goodness, who am I trying to fool? You were right. I did scam you. Oh my goodness. I want to work on that and make myself a better person. Or I expected what actually happened, which was none of that first example, and was just, so what, you did that to me, so what, you did this, so what, you think you're perfect, and I got all those kinds of responses, or I've already apologized for that, or something that doesn't do anything. So I figured, okay, well, there's one of two ways it will go, and it went the second way. So that told me that there's no remorse, there's no regret, there's no embarrassment, there's no shame, there's no wish to improve. So I figured, well, let's just play this one out. Where's it gonna go? So I just figured, and I learned I couldn't, well, I could. I said, oh, so since you've been figured out and since you're not interested in fixing or changing yourself, you must be, and I would say looking for the next target, because that's what they do. They don't want to release or discard the first target until they've got a firm grip on the second and or third, fourth, or fifth. They just cannot be alone, which I have never lived that way. I've always enjoyed the downtime in between cluster B monsters, but these people, they'll have 6 at once if they need, and they don't have any shame, or they like to take risks and thrill seek, so they'll gladly balance 6 people all at the same time, and every night when they go to bed, pat themselves on the back for getting away with it, and none of them know about each other. But anyway, in this case, he had switched his hours. I didn't get to see him quite as much, which left a lot of time apart, and I knew the type of person he was. By this point I'd uncovered, pretended to be a virgin the whole time, but secretly was a whore in private, while trying to tell me he wasn't a whore and that I shouldn't be with anyone else but him, because I was at the phase where I didn't want to be tied down to any one person, and I told that from the start. Yet he was like, well, I'm going to prove to you that you're all I want. And yet we uncovered like many different people that slipped in here and there, and oh, well, that's only because of you, and more nonsense. But anyway, his hours switched, and so I had a lot of time without him, and he'd still come over regularly as possible, and he started to be, like they all are, suspicious, and probably projecting too, because he would be saying, are you seeing other people? Because eventually I stopped seeing other people. I figured I'll try this out. Let's just see how it is with one and see how it goes, of course, later, to find out that he didn't follow that rule. But here I was thinking, what a waste of time. Here I am trying to grow in a different direction, but that's a different story. But anyway, he was all worried. Well, by this point, I pretty much knew I was dealing with another, because that's all I seem to deal with. So I had to take things on my own, because I figured, well, he did. And I realized it's weak to tell everything, to share everything, when you're not being given everything. So you're kind of like setting yourself up for trouble if you're giving everything factual, and yet you're being given fictitious information repeatedly. That's not a fair playing ground. So I came up with a few counter manipulations. One of them was, because our hours were different, there were lots of nights that I was free, he was working, and he had been like doing the jealous thing, like, have you been with other people? Have you been doing this? Have you been doing that? And I came up with an answer that really threw him off, because again, because from the beginning I was the one who just like threw everything out on the table, even if it was ugly or pretty. I didn't like just say, oh, I did all good, I did all good. I would tell the bad and the good, just because Not everybody's all good or bad. And just to show that, hey, I can admit when I did something bad, but I also did this thing that was good. Well, in this particular case, he was acting very suspicious, which, knowing what I knew already, I figured that's projection, which I already figured he was on to the next target, which I had some evidence he was as well, which is another video. But I came back to his question because he seemed obsessed with, I was seeing others at this point. So I came back with, put it this way, you want to know if I'm seeing others? Well, if you're seeing others privately, well then, guess what? So am I. But if you're not seeing anybody else, well then you have nothing to worry about. Now, of course, the response I got was, oh, that means you are seeing others because you think I am. It was like, no, that has nothing to do with it. And basically using the same twisted version of reality they use, which they don't want done to them. But it's like, oh, no, I don't know what you've done or what you haven't done. I'm just saying that if you haven't, well, then you're fine. I haven't either. But if you have, well, then guess what? So have I. Which is, I see it as counter-manipulation because it doesn't give a straight answer, just like they give you fictitious answers. And I'd say, well, you want the answer to that question? Well, then you know. Only you will know. So if you've done nothing, well, then you're fine. If you have done something, you're not fine. And, oh, he didn't like that, because it's basically putting the mask on of a cluster B, because that's the kind of crap they pull. Of course, mine was much more brilliant than his, but that's what would happen at first. And then I guess he was really obsessed that something was going on and still giving the fake future faking type claims that, oh, we can work this out, even though I had a pretty good idea that a new person was being auditioned for the role I once was in. But then he took it further, and this is the tactics part. He knew that I had a PC laptop, and we both had the same cell phone carrier, and he had said something like, I'm going to prove to you I'm not seeing anyone else. I'm going to go today to the phone place, and I'm going to get all the phone records for my phone for the last however many months. And then, once I do that, I want you to pull up yours so I can see them. So it's basically his idea telling me that he's going to go to all this effort to prove I guess it's supposed to be proven by, I guess, not seeing any strange, I don't know what the proof is going to be. But it just, to me, smelled like another tactic, another scam, because when you've seen enough of the scams and you know a new one comes up, you can kind of like think, okay, it's another scam, all right. Well, in this one I thought, oh, that'll be interesting, sure, because I was convinced at this point, anyway, he'd been recruiting the next, like they all do, and turned out he actually was, but we didn't know then. He's still playing the card of, I don't know it yet, so he'll just pretend it's not there. So I was anxiously awaiting to see those phone records, knowing, because these people are daring, because let's just assume he did have like a different number called, texted repeatedly for hours and days. Well, these people are the type that would know that, but still go after the proof that you would think if it was you and you had proof there, you would find a way not to get it because that would blow your cover. But see, these people are daring. Sometimes it seems they want to blow their cover, but they'll push it to the very furthest part they can, and then once it's uncovered, probably twist the whole story a different way. But anyway, so that night, I was like, oh, did you get the phone records? And the answer I got, strangely enough, was, oh, they wouldn't give them to me. My own guess here is that he was trying to get me then to say, well, that's okay, I'll show you mine. Well, I wasn't showing a single thing, because I knew this was a game. I could tell by this point. Which, again, because I knew the games were games, I knew that this person wouldn't be around much longer, because, remember, once they're figured out, it doesn't work anymore. It's like they've used up the canvas. It's all blacked out, so they've got to start fresh with somebody new. And I knew all this by this point. So I kept my records private, and I started making suggestions. I said, well, why couldn't you get your records? Oh, because it's my mother's plan, and she's the main account holder. So I said, well, if you really want those records, then why don't you call up Mama and tell her to go to your particular phone, print the records and ship them or email them. Problem solved. Well, guess what I was told? She doesn't need to see the people I call and text. Now, what's wrong with this discussion or this? What's wrong with this argument? She's the account holder. So she's already got access to all the information. So him telling her to access the information and forward it isn't going to give her anything she didn't already have. So that told me this person is playing another game, trying to trick me into showing my information and then him not having to show his, and it was just repulsive. And then later progressed on to the discovery of the new target, and that's enough for this soap opera tale. But yes, the point of it is it shows how they are very daredevilish, how they will, if you suspect something, like if the roles were reversed and I just said to him, I think you're calling some other person, let's get your records, he would be the type to be, okay, sure, I'll look at them tomorrow, and show no sign of embarrassment, fully well knowing that I'd see the same number 1,000 times, but that's part of their thespian skills, is just acting like, well, sure, because that's intended to gaslight you into thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm pushing things too far, because he certainly wouldn't go pick up such records if he had something to hide that I would discover, but that's the way these people perpetrate their actions.
So what? I told you I was gay. And I was a gay man. And I'm not. I'm a woman, as you can obviously tell. So what? Have you never lied before? I realized we had a great time, but you need to get with the program. I can't believe you had the nerve to call me a liar.
Nobody says no to me and gets away with it. You'll pay. We'll see. Ta-ta for now. You'll see.